Hey there, chess fans! So today we have a miniature game that happened at FlyOrDie website, a site that I bet many people know, and that was played between fabio80 and athomus. The first thing I have to say is that I didn't accompany this game from the very beginning, so I don't know if there are amateurish mistakes, and perhaps it's not that much of an exciting game, but I want you guys to see the final position, how quite odd, unusual. I think I never seen a final position like this. Seriously, I never seen a final position like this. So I'd like to share with you guys. White style d4, d5, c4, queen's gambit, e6, e3, e7, f3, c6, e2, d7. This is all pretty much opening yet, so that's why I'm passing by through the plays with no comments, and then getting off a little from theory and everything else. White played c5, and the c5 move was pretty important for the final position. Anyways, follow g6, fianchetto is coming up, castle, the fianchetto done, and c3. All pretty standard. Well, kinda standard for the queen's gambit. And then castles. Kind of bishop eating on defense for the king. a3, b5, pushing forward, and of course this push forward shouldn't be answered with en passant, because en passant would open room for the knight to jump around the table, and we know how knights jumping around the table aren't good. So anyways, white didn't respond this with en passant of course, but with b4 instead. And you can see that this is a very strong lineage of pawns. a5, trying to break this line, answer with b2, and black here doesn't go for the pawn exchange. And just a small detail, this b2 answer is pretty natural here, because if pawn captures pawns, this line here of pawns would be broken. And I just said that it's a very strong line, so you'd lose a strong line. And if you do other kind of movement and pawn takes pawn, then your knight would be in trouble and your pawn would be in trouble as well. Because if you don't open room to connect pieces with this rook, the pawn here wouldn't be able to take the pawn, as rook could take pawn, and this bishop would be temporarily pinned because of the queen, so it would be a lot of tactical problems for white. That's why this bishop to b2 movement. But here black didn't decided not to break the structure of white, and instead play a4, creating a strong lineage of pawns as well. Followed by e4, trying to break the center a little. Answer with b7, pretty good position for the bishop, because white tried to break the center and then you bring the bishop to take care of the center. So a pretty good defensive reply, I'd say. Bishop to g3, also kinda entering the center, and answer by f6, double attacking this pawn. not big of a problem now, but it's still double attacking it. Here was answer with h3, avoiding the entrance of the knight here. And pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn, knight takes knight, bishop takes knight, and d5, trying to get some nasty place in the future around here, the center. e5, blocking the double connection that both bishop and queen could have here. And bishop takes knight, pawn takes knight, and queen to h4 attacking the bishop. Bishop takes knight and pawn takes pawn. And as you can see, black is threatening of getting an advanced pawn here at any time if white doesn't pay attention. f4, open files for the rook, and also supporting this pawn in the center. c8, bishop to c8, rook to f3, bishop to f5, and this bishop can become quite the bothering around the center because, as I mentioned before, black decided to also create a very good chain of pawns, and they can be used now. d4, busting the defense of this pawn, and e4 attacking the rook. Here white took a good while to make the obvious movement, which is f2. Why f2 is an obvious movement? You can go here, first because you have no support for the rook, and secondly because this pawn would fall, and with this pawn falling, white's pawn structure would be easily demolished, so you can't get rid of defense to this pawn now. So f2 was played, also to avoid any more kind of bothering from this bishop. h5, also creating a good line of pawns here, and h2, f5, in percent could be done, but that would be no good. I mean, of course, if you did an % here, the pawn would be temporarily not be able to be captured, because it would be rook by a pawn, by a bishop, I mean, and a pawn. But anyways, the thing is that after pawn takes pawn here, if en passant was done, the rook on the A file would have space to come to the E file, and thus entering the territory of white, so this would be no good as well. So of course white didn't answer with en passant and decided to attack the queen with g3, queen to e7, and g4. I kinda didn't understand the purpose of this g4 movement, but this is what allowed a bit of attack for black, and that's why exactly I didn't understand the purpose of g4 movement, because it allowed attack for black. Anyways, g4 was played, pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. The idea here was pretty simple, but it's very risky because, as I just said, it opens attack file for black. The idea was pawn takes pawn, 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 and then queen takes pawn, attacking the lone pawn here. But of course, black wouldn't be stupid at point to do this. And after the pawn takes pawn again, play g7. Here white made a pretty logical movement to g5, closing the diagonal that the queen could act into, And now the attack line for black, as I said, with h8 check, king to g3, h5, possibly planning to double rooks, actually planning to double rooks, and then h2 is played. But before trade outs, black decided to play a8 rook to h8, then a small trade of rooks, e2. Notice that white basically doesn't have any counterattack. Black's already taken control of the only open file so far in the game, and the rook can't be played to h1, both because of the well centralized bishop and of course the rook itself. So notice that because of that g4 movement, all that white can do now is waiting for attacks and defending it. Anyways, king goes played to f8, rook to f1, and now h7, creating attack lines. White decided to play further its pawn. Well, as I said before, white can only wait attack now and try to defend it. Can't actually create attacks because there are no open files to explore. And the attack comes up with h3 obvious check, which didn't have proper defense, okay, so it's pretty okay for white not trying to defend it. And then king to f2, and here I think that it's a pretty odd game. I think that black lost the chance of winning. Okay, what black must have thought is that I want to continue my attack, so I don't want to get rid of my rook. But if it's a pretty shame for white, I'd say, because if white did the h2 check play, gaining the queen, black would have probably won the game. But anyways, black didn't play that. As I said, it wanted to continue the attack and played f3 check, king to e1, queen to h4 check, and rook to f2. And here, what black must have thought, I will explain very quick. But anyways, black played h1 check and now rook to f1. And here, black simply gave up the attack, which was pretty better for black, and simply took rook with check, queen takes rook, and queen takes queen, and king takes queen. What black must have thought here is that after king to e7, black would be a pawn up and would possibly win the game. But I think this was such a fast thought that black didn't actually thought that there would be no lines for attack after this, because now king to f2, king takes pawn, and king to e3. Are you guys noticing this position? The bishop is blocking the only free pawn that black has, and all the other pawns are opposing to each other, so no pawns can move. The chain of pawns are so well built for both sides that none of the kings can invade the territory. I'm sorry by laughing to this, but and the bishops are opposite colors, so they can never actually get in front of each other, so It's basically a draw position because none of the sides can do anything to create attack anymore. That's why I said that here it was a bit of impatience out the straight out, because it simply denied any kind of further game. The game had 1, 2, 3, 4, 14 more plays, but useless plays, because as I said, there's nothing you can do here. Both kings can't invade territory. The pawns are opposing to each other, and the only pawn that could have some freedom for black is blocked by a bishop. So, and the bishops left in the game, the light square is bishop for black and the dark square is bishop for white, so they can't be in front of each other. So it's just a draw. That's why I said, have you guys ever seen a position like this? I never seen that, dude. That's why chess is amazing, but this position is funny because both sides can't do anything. I never seen that, dude. It's just so crazy. And that was the main reason why I wanted to show you guys this miniature. Hope you enjoyed the video and see you next time.